distance learning programs will set you up for success. Whether you're balancing work and family or you're a school leaver who must work to support yourself and your studies, Stadio offers access to high-quality, affordable qualifications in law, teacher education, commerce, admin and management, policing, and more. Mid-year applications are now open. Visit stadio.ac.za and register today. Stadio, a new vision in higher education.
Are you ready to buy or build your first home or buy a stand anywhere in South Africa? If you are a South African citizen, you and your spouse have never benefited from a government housing subsidy program, and your household income is between 3,501 and 22,000 Rand per month, your dream can be realized by applying for a first home finance subsidy. To apply, just log into the First Home Finance application online portal at firsthomefinance.co.za or call a call center agent on 010-085-2199 to assist you for free with completing your First Home Finance online application. Beware, applying for First Home Finance subsidy is free. Do not pay anyone when applying for the subsidy. The NHFC is an agency of the National Department of Human Settlements.
SABC Sport delivers a warm blanket this June.
3 teams are playing their hearts out in the PSL promotional playoffs, all hunting for a special ticket to the Big Boys League of Ibhola laseMzansi.
The queens of the beautiful game kick like real champs in the Hollywood Bet Super League.
Foot Freak brings you up to speed on African football, while final analysis wraps up your weekend.
LFC TV is the ultimate destination for Liverpool FC fans, while Sport at 10 keeps you awake on Wednesdays.
Dive deep into comprehensive analysis of the world of boxing on the TKO.
The Journos podcast brings together top sports journalists for engaging conversations and expert insights.
Countdown to Paris brings you up to speed on the build-up to the Olympic Games Paris 2024 on Saturday evenings.
There's action galore in the world of SABC Sport, Boxing World Weekly, NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show, Goats Like Us, Racing 92, and many more. Happy Youth Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
I'll be still in the quiet, in the presence of my God. Though I'm weak and fragile, I'll lay it at the feet. I don't need to say much, 'cause you know me so well. I'll just wait for your touch. That's all I need for real. Oh, that's all I need. I do not walk alone. I do not walk alone. This I know. This I know. I do not walk alone. I do not walk alone. This I know. This I know. I'll be still in the quiet, in the presence of my God. Though I'm scared and weary, I won't take my eyes off the light, 'cause I do not walk alone. No, no, I do not walk alone. This I know. This I know. I do not walk alone. No, I do not walk alone. This I know. This I know. Oh, I don't need to say walk alone. This I know, this I know. We do not walk alone. No, we do not walk alone. This I know, this I know.
It is Jay Something coming through with I Do Not Walk Alone is the title of this particular one. It was penned during COVID and one of the many incredible pieces of music that are contained within the archives of his laptop. And we can only but be thankful that somehow our music department, through the various connections that we have in the record industry, got their hands on this one. And it was quite humorous to have Jay Something in studio for one of our Friday Full Accesses last year, and he was quite amused that we had the song as he was just preparing to release it. It is officially released via your music platforms, wherever you buy music from. You can get that one. Good afternoon to you, and a beautiful Thursday that we are having. I think I was riding up the elevator with one of our streaming crew directors this morning, and he was pointing out how cold it was. Of course, I had to argue and say that the winter is serving beautiful weather, and I'm sure it's doing the same throughout the country, even in your corner of South Africa. There's so much coming up today. We're going to be looking at how happy are SA's middle class youth and how are they faring, in the job market, particularly those that are gainfully employed. What are their attitudes? Are they still holding an attitude of optimism towards the future? And maybe let's shift that story a little bit by focusing on South African youth that do have hope and that do have opportunity. And we're going to be catching up with a brand map around that. We also are going to be touching base with a Braille fashion designer who's bringing inclusivity into the fashion industry, and she'll tell us a bit more about her journey. On the other side of 2 o'clock, we unpack exactly what the newly signed GBV bill has in it, what it contains, and what are the implications for those who've been affected by GBV and those, of course, who are actively and proactively involved in the fight to curb GBV. It was one of the many bills that was signed in the 11th hour at the end of the 6th Parliament. That is coming up on the other side of 2. We'll also let you know what else is coming up on the other side of 2 closer to that time. Listen, I've been teasing you about it for the last 2 days, but today is the day where I am giving away that set of double tickets. So I'm giving away 2 tickets for you and your partner to come through and join me in Makanda. Once again, I'm going to be in Makanda coming next week. We're going to be at the National Arts Festival, and you can win yourself a set of return flights and accommodation for 2 nights, as well as tickets to enjoy some of the shows that are on the festival's lineup. I'll tell you how you can go about putting your name in the hat to prospectively be a person joining me with your loved one. Of course, there are T's and C's that apply here, but for the most part, we've got you covered. And this is brought to you by the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency, as well as the National Arts Festival. So keep a keen ear as to how you can enter this competition, and hopefully before the show is over today, we'll have ourselves a winner. 086 000 2032 or 061 410 4107 is our WhatsApp line.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
Municipal services play a vital role in keeping our city safe, clean, and functional. By paying for municipal services like your water bill, you're investing in the future of the city of Johannesburg's water supply. Paying for your services is not just a transaction, but a commitment to the sustainability of your community. Let's continue to pave the way for a brighter tomorrow, one payment at a time. Brought to you by Johannesburg Water, a water utility that cares.
Now you can get private banking levels of service from Auto & General. They've just launched their private advisory service, and if you have more than a car to insure and your combined cover is valued at more than 1 million rand, you qualify. To celebrate, they're giving you the chance to win in the Auto & General Combine and Qualify competition. Visit safm.co.za, complete the entry form, and we could be calling you live on air. You'll be presented with various scenarios of insurable items. If you combine the correct two that meet the qualifying criteria for a private advisor, you'll win 5,000 Rand. Plus, if you get an obligation-free insurance quote from Auto & General, you'll get an extra 1,000 Rand. Visit safm.co.za and enter now. Auto & General is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
Richmond United ladies have big plans to spend more time in the top 4. But First Touch FC wants to live up to their name and put together first touches that will trouble their opponents. This is the Hollywood Bet Super League. Catch them Zanzi Queens of the beautiful game. Richmond United Ladies FC versus First Touch Ladies FC. This Saturday 22 June at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. Also available on SABC Plus and SABCSport.com. Hashtag we love it here. Brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
SAFM invites young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this coming Youth Month. And all you have to do is send us a WhatsApp voice note on 061-410-4107 or email info@safm.co.za and the show that you would like to co-host, telling us what are the 2 compelling issues facing our 30 years of democracy and how perhaps that fits into the youth. And we could be calling you. Remember that T's and C's do apply.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and we're catching up with Brandon de Kock now, who's the Director of Storytelling at Brandmark. And of course, it is Youth Month, and we are celebrating and honoring the journey of the 1976 youth on the backdrop of staggering unemployment rates, on the backdrop of 30 years of democracy, and of course, on us having just wrapped up the 2024 election season. And we thought it only prudent to tap into the work that BrandMap does and find out the state of South African young adults, particularly those that are within the economic landscape, those that are perhaps in the position to have tertiary education and also might be in a position where they can dream and be optimistic and be ambitious about what the future holds. Good afternoon to you, Brandon. How are you doing today?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm absolutely fabulous. Thank you. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. And I think every time we tell the story of South African youth, we're always looking at it from the lens of, and as we should, given the numbers, just the lack of opportunity, the lack of resource and funding. We're always looking at unemployment. We never really tell the flip side of the coin. And sort of lean into the youth that are economically active, that are participating in the workforce, that have been able to really take advantage of some of the opportunity and resource.
Yeah, I think it's more important ever, possibly, that we look at the glass slightly half full, even if it's a third full. So the piece of the population that we've always been interested in is what we call the tax-paying households of South Africa. So I think we all know that our country faces some enormous challenges, and hopefully coming out of the good news, I think of a coalition that looks like it might work. Maybe the possibilities for the future are a little brighter. So maybe let's shift on to not necessarily the people who we know desperately need help, but who the people are that are likely to be able to help them. The 70% of adults in South Africa who live in below 10,000 Rand a month income households are going to get funded effectively by the work that goes on by the 30% of people who are economically or have economic choices, right? And that's what we do. So Brand Map is a study of the roughly 13 million adults in South Africa who live in households earning more than 10,000 Rand a month. And when we put a lens filter, a youth filter onto those people, that's this report that we've produced, which I think is quite fascinating, because you're talking about a group of 5 million young people in South Africa who have education, who are employed, and they're the ones who hopefully going to drag us, if necessary, hopefully with a smile on their face, into a bright, different future for the country. Yeah.
Let's hone in a little bit more on these 5 million. So give us a sort of overview of the survey study that you conducted.
So the survey is, as I said, we only look at 10,000 Rand a month household income. And in South Africa, what's interesting about that is that, first of all, demographically, we're talking about a group of people, 13 million people. It's a lot of people. When we look at the under 35 cohort in particular, you're talking about 90% of those 5 million young educated adults are people who identify as BIPOC individuals, so Black, Indigenous people of color. They are highly educated. The vast majority of them actually do have some form of tertiary education. And by definition, they have personal incomes exceeding 10,000 Rand a month. So they're starting to sort of make some choices. That's, for me, I think that's the big thing that is that's the lens we put on the future, is like, how many choices do people have in life, and what are the choices that these young people have? So that's who we're talking about. We're talking about the lucky ones, not the 45% who are unemployed, but the ones who, the vast majority of whom actually do have jobs. The 60% of them, 60 to 70% are young working people.
Yeah. Elaborate for us on some of the key findings, I guess specifically around the financial outlook as well.
Yeah, so the financial outlook's really interesting. Again, what we forget about young people with jobs is that life has probably never been better, right? When you're young and you're educated and you start sort of climbing the ladder, let's call it that. Just imagine your first job, you get a starting salary. The next year, you're almost guaranteed an increase. And if we ask these young people how they're feeling financially compared to like 2 years ago, like 60% of them say I'm feeling better off, or at least the same. So these young people they're the complete opposite. I often try and say to people, imagine the South African economy. What a slinky spring is.
Yes.
The springs that go. Imagine if you were holding two ends of them with the middle sagging between your two hands. And it feels like that's how people in South Africa feel, that the poorest of the poor people have fortunately now benefited from social grants. They have something. But on the other end, there's a group of these people, and most of them are young people, who have never been better. Life's never been better for them, So that they've got reason to be hopeful. They have reason to be hopeful because they're actually living okay lives relative not just to the rest of society, but also to their expectations. You know what I mean? Like, they had a hope out of life, and it seems that for 60% of them, things are actually going pretty okay. And that translates into all the other sort of interesting things we know about them. That they're not necessarily pessimistic about South Africa's future. Only I think less than 30% say I'm pessimistic about the future. Quite a lot of them are unsure, but they've got every reason to not be necessarily pessimistic because they have high levels of education, they've got an income, and they do see some hope for the future. So that was, I think, one of the big findings, was that this is a group of young people who they have every reason to be positive. And we need to recognize that and support them in that positivity.
I'm going to double back to, this pessimistic, less than 30% that are pessimistic, because I want to see how that correlates with the conversation around immigration, which was part of the conversation of your survey. But I also want to find out from you, before we move on from this point, is in comparison to older generations, where do the aspirations of this particular middle class youth, and I'm using it in inverted commas, where do the aspirations of this middle class youth sort of lay in comparison to the generation before them? If, for instance, we're looking at the older millennials.
Oh, I see. So you mean, are you talking about aspirations in terms of what they want to do in life?
In aspirations of life, and perhaps, where they see themselves, and even, I guess, by extension, where they see the country.
Yeah, so the levels of optimism, I guess what's interesting is that almost everybody in this cohort, let's call it the taxpayer cohort, have similar feelings about optimism, funny enough. They feel, levels of optimism are not necessarily defined by age. I think it's probably more an aspect of education. So this whole group of people are the educated masses of South Africa.
I see.
That's their ultimate privilege. And I think education is a privilege at the way things have turned out. I mean, I'd like to think it's a right, but I think the reality is in South Africa, it's a privilege if you've managed to get a good education. So the optimism levels aren't necessarily that different. When you talk about aspirations, about what these younger people want to do in life, that they are, as I said, they're at the beginning of their journey. So we measure them as being massively aspirational. We have a measure where we ask people, what do you expect to do in the next year? And it's a great indication of aspiration, because if you look at the total population, sort of 25% roughly say, I want to get a new job. When you look at younger people, the youth, like 50% of them say, I want to get a new job. So, they're definitely the one little aspirational data point I love is this idea that 39%, so call it 40% of young people, when asked what they expect to do, tick a box to say start a business. Do you know, have you had discussions on your show before about entrepreneurship in South Africa? And
yes.
Entrepreneurial spirit. So I think a lot of the time we give our youth a hard time by saying that, there's not a lot of aspirational entrepreneurial spirit. And this data seems to prove that wrong. I think that young people would love to start their own business. I think they see a bit of a land of opportunity in the South African landscape,
I mean, there's so much to unpack, and we'll continue on the other side of this with Brendan de Kock, who's the Director of Storytelling at Brand Map. For now, let's take a quick pause as it approaches 1:30 and catch up with Madupi Makhalamele with the headline news.
Thank you very much, Bridget, and a very good afternoon. In your headlines, the SAWA, the Human Rights Commission, says it'll today launch a legal action against the suspended DA MP Ronaldo Gous at the Equality Court. A motorist has died after his car crashed through the wall of a Durban Mall parking lot, falling 4 stories and landing on its roof. And more than 30 people have died and dozens of others hospitalized after drinking illegally brewed liquor in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. I'll be back with a full news update at 2.
You're listening to Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. If you are watching us on live stream, then you know that there's a lot of moving parts on the show today. But it be like that sometimes. As the young people say, we are catching up with Brandon de Kock, who's the Director of Storytelling at Brand Map. And we're taking a look at some of the findings of a recent study that they've done, just gauging the sentiment around SA's middle-class youth. And it seems from what Brendan has told us up to this point is as generally the sentiment is that South Africa's middle-class youth, and perhaps middle-class by extension, are, generally happy and optimistic. And you say less than 30% say that they are pessimistic. And then I wonder, how did that fare with the conversation around immigration?
Yeah, so it's a fascinating little study. We've been telling this story, I think, for about 5 or 6 years. So picture this scene. You ask young people and older people how optimistic they are, and roughly less than 30% of them sound pessimistic. A lot of people sound unsure, but that's a lot better than being pessimistic. the next question we ask them is how likely do they think they are to emigrate from South Africa in the next 5 years? And then we actually specify, i.e., like move and live in another country. We don't say forever. We just say, move and live in another country. And this is where the story changes. Because if you look at the older generation, about 24-25% of them say I'm likely or very likely. Okay? So a quarter. But when you ask young people, 50% of them say likely or very likely. So now here's what's interesting is that obviously I think that is a hope rather than a known reality. Right?
Yes.
I think what we're measuring here is we're measuring a sentiment more than anything. But isn't it interesting that we've got a group of young people who feel quite confident about where they're at in life? They're doing much better than maybe we give them credit for. They're feeling relatively optimistic about South Africa, or at least not pessimistic. And yet half of them seem to think that the grass will be greener on the other side. So there's so much that's sitting inside this one little insight. The first thing I think is fascinating is, and I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I don't think that young people have ever had a better idea of what lies on the other side of the ocean. You know what I mean? Like through social media, through the internet, whatever. When I was young, I had no idea what people earned or got paid or what the possible job market looked like in Europe.
Yes.
Now it's literally one click away.
Absolutely. So, and weirdly enough, Brendan, as you point that out, in my brain, I'm thinking, because of exactly that, the connectivity, right? We have a far more realistic picture, perhaps, of like the global context. It's not airy-fairy anymore. And then I wonder if also the 50% that said likely are also speaking from the perspective of, because now you understand accessibility and you understand, the world is not contained within just the four quarters, the four realms of your neighborhood. You can now chart your aspirations globally, and it's not necessarily a reflection of what your country lacks, but rather a reflection of where maybe your mindset has been, broadened as a young person.
I think that's absolutely spot on. I think we all, as South Africans, especially this group, the tax-paying group, call it the privileged group of South Africans. I think we have to love South Africa. I mean, it's an extraordinary place, and it's got an extraordinary energy. So it's not necessarily the push factor that we would imagine is sitting behind this sentiment. I think a lot of it also might have to do with just gross income levels, right? So we did a friend of mine was doing some investigation into the job market overseas, and do you know that if you're and I'm not looking down on a kindergarten teacher here.
Yeah.
It's a vital role, but in terms of like somewhere between a kindergarten teacher and the CEO of Woolworths or Pick and Pay, I think being a kindergarten teacher is a wonderful sort of job. It's not necessarily a highly paid job in South Africa. Right?
Yeah.
Do you know that a kindergarten teacher in Europe will be paid about 2,000 euros a month? That would immediately catapult you into the top 5% of South African society on the exchange rate.
Yeah.
Because it's 20 to 1. You know? So now imagine being a highly qualified person. Imagine being an accountant, a CA, a doctor, anything with a high qualification. And you're looking at South Africa and going, relatively speaking, you could literally earn 5 or 10 times as much by operating in another country and sending that money home to your family if they need it.
Yeah.
So I think that all those kind of things at play, and then also just the idea that these young people have grown up in a global society, and I think they feel part of it, and I think they see no reason why they can't be a greater part of it.
Let's also talk about the things which is part of what came out of your study, right? The things that also make young people, feel good. The things that make young people feel a sense of achievement, the materialness of life, the material look and feel of success. Things like cars. That becomes a milestone marker for young people who are in the taxpayer bracket.
Yeah, absolutely. I think a car. There are a few things that we believe we know from the data. The two things that are almost like the membership cards to the middle class club, right? So this idea of what are the things that symbolize I'm getting somewhere. And we've identified two things always. The first is that car ownership is definitely it's a leap forward, right? Getting wheels, getting out of public transport, it's definitely a step up. Interestingly, even for these young people who don't have cars, what we do see is they've also grown up in a world of convenience that certainly didn't exist 10 years ago. So we see really high levels of usage of things like, Uber Eats and Mr. Delivery. Like 50% of these youngsters are saying they'll get food delivered at least once a month.
Yeah.
We see very high levels, like 35% of them saying they're using services like Checker 6060. So even if you don't have a car, you can still live a lekker life. You know what I mean? You can still live a full consumer life, because that's the age these young people are growing up in. One where they're used to getting things delivered. They're used to using Uber to get around. So the car remains it's probably even become an even more elevated symbol of success.
Yeah.
And then the other big one is travel. I don't know how you feel about the young people around you, but for me, I love the way young people get excited about travel. I'm very privileged. I was fortunate enough to travel a lot in my life, mostly on business.
Yeah.
And this whole idea of being able to sit around a table with your mates, and you're the one who's been to New York, or so those are some of the things that are sitting in these young people's heads. It's maybe not that different from what it was many years ago. I think that the symbols of success are pretty much always going to be there. And having a job, having an education, having a job, having a car, and being able to travel. Sure. I mean, doesn't that sound like a life that we all want to lead?
Absolutely. As we wrap it up, Brandon, and I'm not sure in terms of when the study was undertaken, whether or not the sort of election season was already in our view, already within sight. And I wonder, given that, given the run-up to and, of course, the results of the elections, whether or not South African young people still have long-term optimism, long-term future optimism about their prospects in this country.
So the study was done sort of 6 months ago. So it's an annual survey. We're going back in the field soon, and we'll have an updated version of it. I suspect that the levels of optimism might actually be the same. But when you start talking about politics, it's the one area where I get a little frustrated, I have to say, about just. I'll tell you what it is. Globally, engaging youth in the voting process is always a challenge. Doesn't matter what country you're in. The difference in South Africa, do you know that the median age, so the median is the middle point of the population. In other words, where 50% are below and 50% are above. The median age in America and Britain is around about 40 years old. So there are as many people under 40 as there are over 40. In South Africa, our median age is 27.
Oh.
Okay. So what it means, what the young people of South Africa haven't yet figured out, is that just because they're a little disenfranchised from the political process, just because they're a bit disinterested, and a lot of them, the majority of them who don't vote, don't believe their vote can make a difference. But we need to educate them that they're blimming wrong about that. Because there are so many young people in South Africa, people under the age of 35, do you know that if everyone under the age of 40 who didn't even bother to register in this last election, they didn't bother to register. If they had registered and voted for the same party, that party would have won the election. So we need desperately to somehow engage young people in the idea that this is the one country in the world where you can't be complacent as a young person, because young people genuinely have the ability to shape the country the way they want it to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Brandon de Kock, thank you so much for your time. And Brandon is the Director of Storytelling at BrandMap. It's just gone 20 to 2 o'clock right here on The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Mokopane.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
From Holy Rosary School in Edenvale, two of the learners, Alexia Finlayson and Caitlin De Freitas. So how do you get the balance right between your sport, where you obviously excel, and the academics, where you excel as well?
So I can definitely say that rowing is a very time-consuming sport. But ever since I started rowing, I've definitely learned how to manage my time very well. So in the free time, like to and from Rudderplaat, I study and I learn notes and stuff, and I write it in the bus as well.
Alexia?
I really enjoy going out. So I always ensure to have a balance between my academics, my sports, and going out. Like example, today, I took my biology notes with me to this, and during the free time, I made sure to study in between that.
Top Sport on SAFM. You are listening to The Full Circle.
All right, it is the Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. By the way, we are running a competition, and we're getting closer and closer to me telling you the exact details. But just be ready to hit your Google. This is one of those where I decided to make it as simple as I possibly could for you. And I'm inviting you to come join me in Makanda for 2 nights accommodation on us. And of course, we will fly you in there as well as handle your ground logistics. And I'll tell you how you get to enter the competition. It's very, very simple, but just be ready with your phone and your internet. And I'll be telling you more about that in just a matter of moments. For now, though, it's made in SA, and we are going to be catching up with Belini Naidu Engelbrecht, who's a Braille fashion designer.
Made in SA with Bridget Masinga.
Alrighty, so for our Made in SA today, we're speaking to a visionary fashion designer from Saldanha Bay, and she's breaking ground with a Braille clothing range that is transforming accessibility for the visually impaired. How are you doing this afternoon, Belini?
Good afternoon, Bridget. I'm good, thanks, and you?
I'm great, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. Let's talk about the inspiration behind your decision to incorporate Braille into fashion, and then I'll find out exactly how you've incorporated it.
So I had an uncle that was visually impaired that he made me identify his daily choices of clothing. And then I studied fashion and textile design at Durban University of Technology.
Yeah.
Where I developed the Braille identification system.
Interesting. Okay, so and you know what you've just said made sense, right? Because if you are visually impaired, or you do have a visually impaired family member, there must be some trust there to having someone like Belini come and help you with your wardrobe every single day, which is something that if you are visually impaired or visually abled, you don't think about, you don't give it a second thought. So tell me about the sort of, I guess, the innovation, the technology that you are now using in the clothes, or how are you using Braille in the clothing?
So the Braille is printed onto garments with raised puff paint, so it's textured for visually impaired people to read the Braille. So the identification system tells you the color of the garment, the size, the wash care label, and how to style the garment together.
Interesting. Okay, Belini, so I'm trying to get sort of like the visual look of, so when you say it's printed on, is it printed on the textile roll? So if you buy the roll of fabrication, it's printed on the textile roll, so wherever you feel the textile, or it's in a specific place of the final garment, that like the labeling or the side stitching where you can feel the Braille to get that information?
So it's not on a printed roll. Okay. It's on custom-made garments, specifically like my branding, my range of Braille clothing, and it's printed onto garments all over. So it's graphically appealing. It creates awareness for visually impaired people all over. We have slogans on our T-shirt that say, "I love you," or we have branded T-shirts. So I've pushed it a bit more on being innovative and made slogans in Braille. So it's a new way of communications amongst visually impaired people and also the sighted.
Yes.
Yes.
Interesting. Very interesting. Now, tell me about sort of when doing this, right? Because I'm imagining in my head that it would have been probably just easier from a manufacturing perspective to just get your labels printed in Braille, right? Where you just put the name of your brand, the size, and some care instructions, for instance. But you've taken it that one step further. With a graphic print onto your garments. What were some of the challenges in as far as developing the idea to that sort of point?
Some of my challenges were, getting data, as backup, as references. Nothing as this sort has been done before. Like you're saying, there is other stuff that you could buy, like tasers, there's smartphones, but or there's labels you can buy that you sew onto additional clothing. But there isn't something that you walk into the store and it directly tells you, look, this is a black T-shirt, this is a black pants, it pairs well with this and that. So I think that's one of the challenges that I face, gathering data and having something to reference where there was nothing of its sort. So creating a product was very difficult, but I mastered it quite well. And other thing is that the Braille can only be printed on medium weight fabric because it goes under a heat press for the toughness of the paint to rise. Mm-hmm. So that also was a big challenge. I mean, every garment that I put it on or fabric, I need to test it thoroughly and make sure that the Braille is also readable. So I worked closely with the Innovation of the Blind in Worcester, and they actually helped me transcribe the Braille into text, and then also test the garments, is it readable? And
Now, from what I understand, you've not just innovated this for South Africa. You are essentially the only known designer right now worldwide who's incorporated this Braille identification system into her fashion range.
Yes, so far correctly standing. I think I am in South Africa and nationwide. There is some other designers who have contacted me who have also have adapted it onto their fashion, but not the Braille identification system.
Very interesting. And I mean, no doubt, this kind of work not only is appreciated by those members of South African community who are visually impaired, and organizations like the Braille Society, but also just the potential that it holds, the potential that it holds for individuals like your uncle.
Yes. Like I said, this is just not another fashionable runway garment. It's something that stands out and makes a statement for visually impaired people all over the world. If you wear this T-shirt boldly, you are making fashion inclusive for everyone, and especially for the visually impaired.
Bellini, listen, congratulations to you. Hope to see more and more coming out from your fashion range. This is the kind of innovation I think we need, specifically in these creative spaces. That was Bellini Naidu Engelbrecht. And essentially, as far as we know right now, she is the only fashion designer in South Africa and perhaps even globally that's incorporated Braille identification systems into her designs. And if you look on her digital platforms, you get to actually see how the graphics come to life on the individual garments. And like she says, it's not just a matter of slapping Braille on the label, on the side stitch, but it's actually incorporating Braille into the design. I'm actually looking at, some images of her designs, and I'm thinking it's not just a T-shirt anymore. There's so much encoded in the T-shirt already, so much information that's encoded in the T-shirt already. Amazing. Just gone 10 to 2 o'clock on the Full Circle. So I am giving you an opportunity to join me in Makhanda for the National Arts Festival 2024. And of course, this prize includes return flights for you and a partner from anywhere in South Africa to Gqeberha. It will also include ground transportation by way of car hire for the duration of your visit, as well as 2 nights accommodation and tickets to enjoy some of the shows at the festival. And the competition is brought to you by the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency alongside the National Arts Festival. And here's what I'm asking you. So you know that there are a variety of National Arts Festival curated categories, right? There's the Fringe program, the curated program, the National Jazz program, the Third Space program. And I want to find out from you, name me any 3 shows that will be staged under the National Jazz Festival program. So if you can name me any 3 shows or any 3 jazz artists that are going to be showcased under the National Jazz program at this year's National Arts Festival, you could be joining myself and my team out in Makhanda. 086 000 2032 is the number that you can call if you think you know the answer to that. Call right now. In fact, we're standing by. 086 000 2032.
Hello friends and welcome to another episode of Nali Bali. What sport do you play at school? I'm asking because participating in school sports can improve your self-esteem and help you feel better about yourself. Having physical education in the school curriculum allows you from a young age to develop the social skills to work with other teammates, make new friends, and learn how rewarding it is to work hard. How your contribution impacts your team's success can be incredibly empowering. The self-confidence you gain from participating in sports and physical education carries over to other areas of your life, such as academic studies and personal relationships. Let's listen to today's story called Sports Day, written by Lorianne Preston. But before we listen to today's story, let's all get up and dance! One morning, at the start of the school day, Miss Boyce said to her class,
"Children, I have something very exciting to tell you."
Yay! Cheered the class. They liked exciting news.
On Friday, we're going to have a sports day. It is a day to have fun and be active outside. You will do all kinds of exciting physical activities, like running and jumping over hurdles, long jump, high jump, tossing a ring on a cone, hula hooping, tossing a ball into a bucket, and jumping in a sack.
Hooray! Cheered the class. They were looking forward to sports day. The only person who didn't cheer was Sipho.
"What's wrong, Sipho?"
asked his best friend Imita.
"I'm not good at sports."
Sipho replied sadly.
"Don't worry, I'll help you,"
said Imita. Luke, who was sitting on the other side of Sipho, was a kind boy. So he said,
"I will also help you."
At break, the children practiced for sports day by having a running race across the playground. Imita, who was a natural leader, got the children to line up at the end of one of the playgrounds. Sipho lined up next to Luke, but Sipho looked worried. Luke turned to Sipho and whispered,
"What's wrong?"
Sipho looked at the ground and whispered back,
"I'm not very good at running."
Luke tried to make Sipho feel better, so he said,
"I'm not fast either. It'll be fine. We can just try our best."
Then Imita shouted,
"Are you ready? On your marks. Get set. Ready. Fire. Go!"
All the children charged forward like rockets blasting off into space. After 2 strides, Sipho stumbled over his own feet and fell onto the grass. He wasn't physically hurt, but he was upset that everyone had seen him fall.
"I told you I wasn't good at running,"
Sipho said sadly to his friends.
Never mind.
Said Imita.
Let's just try the long jump."
Sipho's heart sank.
"Oh no, this is going to be bad,"
he thought to himself.
"Come on, everyone,"
shouted Imita.
"Make a line so we'll see who can jump the furthest."
Sipho wanted to hide, but he lined up with everyone else. When it was his turn, he closed his eyes and jumped as far as he could. Even though he tried his best, his jump was the shortest.
"Maybe I can just ask my granny to keep me at home on Friday."
Sipho sighed.
"No ways,"
declared Imita.
"We'll find something you're good at and that you can enjoy."
For the rest of the week, during the week, Imita and Luke encouraged Sipho to try out all the different sports day activities. Despite trying his best, Sipho wasn't very good at any of them. Every day, Miss Boy reminded the children that sports day was not about winning. It was about taking part and having fun. Sipho was still worried. None of the activities had been enjoyable for him. In fact, he found them all to be awful. Friday arrived, and the children were all dressed up in their sports clothes. Everyone was so excited, except for Sipho. Before the activities began, Miss Boy called Sipho over to her desk.
"Sipho, I've noticed that you've been very unhappy. Is everything okay?"
Miss Boy asked. She was concerned about Sipho. He was usually such a happy and helpful child.
"Miss Boy, I'm not good at sports,"
said Sipho, looking at the ground.
"Please don't be sad, Sipho,"
said Miss Boy.
"I was actually going to ask you to help me with a very important job for sports day."
Sipho immediately looked alert and excited.
"I need someone I can rely on to be my helper. Would you be interested in that?"
"Oh, yes, please,"
said Sipho, smiling like the sun had just come out from behind a cloud.
"Great!"
He realized that Miss Boy was right. Sports Day wasn't just about being the best at sports or winning every event. It was Sipho hoped there would be Sports Day every year. And so we come to the end of another Nali Bali story time. Today's story was called Sports Day, written by Lorianne Preston. Did you know that reading and telling stories to children at home can help them do better at school? If you want free stories to read to your children or for your children to enjoy on their own, visit Nali Bali website www.nalibali.org or Mobi site www.nalibali.mobi. You will find stories in 11 South African languages, as well as tips for reading and sharing stories with your children to grow their potential. Also look out for the bilingual Nali Bali Reading for Enjoyment supplements with great children's stories and activities available in newspapers. Nali Bali, it starts with a story.
The top stories at 2 o'clock. The HRC to sue Ronaldo Gous and dozens killed after drinking illegal booze in India. A very good afternoon. The Human Rights Commission says it has filed papers at the Equality Court against suspended DA MP Ronaldo Gous. This follows alleged racial slurs made by Gous in a video that has been circulating on social media. In it, Gous is alleged to call for the killing of black people. In a statement, the Commission says the public made it aware of the video and it has since concluded that the utterances constitute hate speech. Here's the Commission's Wisani Baloyi.
Following assessment of the content, the Commission has concluded that utterances allegedly made by Mr. Gous constitute hate speech and or harassment as contemplated in terms of Section 10 and 11 of the Promotion of Equality and the Prevention of Unfair Discrimination Act, PEPUDA. Given Mr. Gous' position as a Member of Parliament, his alleged action carry even greater weight and responsibility, as he is expected to uphold and embody the principles enshrined in the Constitution, including human dignity, equality, and non-discrimination.
A motorist has died after his car crashed through the wall of a Durban Mall parking lot, falling 4 stories and landing on its roof. ALS paramedic spokesperson Gareth Jamieson says the incident took place at the Atrium Shopping Centre. He says Overport Drive has been closed to deal with the crash and to clear the debris that fell on the road.
Members from Durban Fire Department and Metro Police Search and Rescue are in attendance as well. ALS paramedics arrived on scene to find the single occupant of the vehicle severely entrapped in the wreckage and unfortunately had sustained fatal injuries. There was nothing paramedics could do for him and he's been declared deceased at the scene. The scene is on Overport Drive and Overport, and the roadway has been closed, so I'd advise all motorists to avoid this area at all costs.
Child killer and former top cop Marius van der Westhuizen will be released on parole at the end of July. He was today granted parole after his third appearance before the parole board at the Malmesbury Correctional Centre on Tuesday. He murdered his children, who were aged 16, 5 and 21 months, at their home in 2006 to punish his wife, Charlotte. The lawyers for his now former wife opposed the parole. Correctional Services spokesperson Singabakho Nxumalo says van der Westhuizen remains a prisoner until 2034.
He was then granted a parole placement date of the 31st of July 2024. He is expected to serve the remainder of the sentence until September 2034. This decision taken by the parole board was aligned to Section 73 of the Correctional Services Act, as it prescribes that a minimum sentence period has to be served before any parole consideration is to be effected.
The Wind Energy Association says there is a greater need for a variety of energy systems in the country. CEO Murungwa Ramaboa says wind energy contributed more than 46 gigawatt hours to the national grid last year. The organization oversees operations at the West Coast 1 wind farm in Vredenburg. Ramaboa says that wind energy can play a key role in stabilizing the national grid.
We have 34 operational wind farms with a total output of 3,442 megawatts installed capacity. We are able to keep the lights on in 3.6 million households in South Africa, and this was just in 2023 alone. And due to the capacity factor of wind of between 30 to 50%, we contribute anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 megawatts of power at any given time. And that is between 1 and 2 stages of load shedding.
And more than 30 people have died and dozens others hospitalized after drinking illegally brewed liquor in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. Police have arrested a man for selling illicit liquor and have also seized a methanol-mixed alcohol drink. The BBC's Anparasana Tirajan reports.
Those who drank the toxic liquor suffered from vomiting, stomachache and diarrhea. More than 100 people have been admitted to hospitals in the southern Indian state of Tamil Nadu. The condition of some of those in hospital is said to be critical. 10 police officers have been suspended over the incident. Writing on social media, the Chief Minister of Tamil Nadu, M.K. Stalin, said he was shocked and saddened by the news.
The top story at 2 o'clock, the Human Rights Commission says it has filed papers at the Equality Court against the suspended DA MP Ronaldo Gous. For SAFM News, Kemudupi Makhalemel.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
From Holy Rosary School in Edenvale, two of the learners, Alexia Finlayson and Caitlin de Freitas. So how do you get the balance right between your sport, where you obviously excel, and the academics, where you excel as well?
So I can definitely say that rowing is a very time-consuming sport. But ever since I started rowing, I've definitely learned how to manage my time very well. So in the free time, like to and from Rudeplot, I study and I learn notes and stuff, and I write it in the bus as well.
Alexia?
I really enjoy going out. So I always ensure to have a balance between my academics, my sports, and going out. Like example, today, I took my biology notes with me to this, and during the free time, I made sure to study in between that.
Top Sport on SAFM. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
It is R&B crooner Maxwell coming through with Ascension, Don't Ever Wonder. And this one was released via Columbia Records back in 1996. I think it becomes one of his most seminal pieces of works. The album was Maxwell's Urban Hang Suit. And that is how we kick off the show this afternoon for the second hour on The Full Circle with myself, Bridget Masinga. I hope you are giving my producers a call. When I was behind the scenes just now, I saw all the phone lines flashing on 086 000 2032. At about 2:30, we will give you a call back. We'll just randomly select some random lines to call back and see if you have the answers for me. And of course, as you heard, I'm giving you an opportunity to win yourself a set of double tickets. That's 2 tickets to come and join me at Makanda for the National Arts Festival. And in the prize package, it's return flights for you and a partner from anywhere in South Africa into Gqeberha. And of course, the ground logistics by way of car hires are going to be on us as well. And 2 nights accommodation also on us. And of course, you get to come through and also get yourself tickets to enjoy some of the shows at the festival. And this is all brought to you by the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency alongside the National Arts Festival. And the only question I'm asking is that as part of the curated program for the National Jazz Festival, name me 3 shows or 3 artists that are going to be showcasing under the National Jazz Festival. Remember, there's a few programs that are curated and presented during the National Arts Festival. There's the Fringe program, there's the curated program, and then there's the National Jazz Festival program. So if you name me 3 shows that are going to be showcased under the National Jazz Festival, then you could walk away with that prize ticket. So stand by your phone, because we'll be giving you a call back, and then we'll just randomly select numbers to call back, and hopefully you answer your phone and give us the correct answers. Right now, though, let's catch up with Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, who is the founder and executive director of the NGO Masimanyane Women's Rights. And we're trying to unpack what the new GBVF bill that was signed into law by President Ramaphosa contains. Good afternoon to you, Dr. Leslie. How are you?
Good afternoon, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really well, thanks. I'm freshly back from the inauguration, which was a huge experience.
Oh, lovely, 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 lovely. So we're glad that you're still on that high of the inauguration. And of course, just as a build up towards that, in the week or 2 leading into the elections, there were a lot of bills that the president signed. And one of them was the GBF bill signed into law. Maybe give us some context around what it took for this bill to eventually see the presidential signature.
Well, it's been a long process. The bill emanates from some of the demands that were made by the total shutdown campaign, the 24 demands that were put to the president. And some of it was about having a national council on gender-based violence. What was needed, why this is needed, is to have a central mechanism that coordinates all the work on gender-based violence. The context is that we have extremely high levels of gender-based violence, and we have been looking at various strategies to try to change the trajectory of these high levels of violence. And women have said for many years that we need this central mechanism. So that's the background to it. We first started with the National Strategic Plan on Gender-Based Violence, as you know. That was developed by women from around the country, both civil society and government as well. And in that process, we actually structured we worked on a structure for the National Council that was part of the brief in doing the National Strategic Plan. So we have the National Strategic Plan, but at the moment it is being in partly looked the custodian for it is in DSD. With other departments as well reporting to it. We have other mechanisms, like we've had an interministerial committee to address gender-based violence, but we insisted that we have one central mechanism because we believe that it's going to be able to pull together the different strands of work and give us a more coherent, holistic approach to addressing gender-based violence. So this legislation brings into or gives us the strong government backing for this mechanism, which will be the National Council on Gender-Based Violence. It's a big step, and we're glad. We were very worried about whether President Ramaphosa would still be in power so that he continues with this project. And we are relieved that he is, because we believe it will have the political will to carry on. And he mentioned in his speech yesterday his concerns around gender-based violence and his concerns around the slow progress on advancing gender equality in our society. Those are very important, points that he raised.
Absolutely. And as you say, the president has stressed the ongoing need for coordinated efforts across various sectors in order to effectively and efficiently prevent and respond to GBV. What impact do you foresee that the National Council on GBVF will have on the current efforts that are already in place?
Well, I think the way in which it is now implemented is going to be a bit of a struggle because we have to appoint 13 commissioners, I think they'll call it commissioners, to the council, councillors, I suppose. And that's going to be up for grabs in terms of who gets to be appointed there. Now, we have this government of national unity now. So we're not familiar with all the people whose names may be put forward to come onto that council, but it's imperative now that council, the structure is actually put in place. We appoint, people to that. And then they've got to work at looking at where all the points, the nodules, where gender-based violence is addressed. They have to look at the legislation. The National Strategic Plan in particular is going to guide how they run the programs moving forward. It is my view that we need to have a countrywide prevention program which is driven by the government. So the National Council can actually have that program. And the prevention program's got to look at how to address the norms, the negative norms in our society. What does a prevention program have to contain to change attitudes and behaviors? You see, at the moment, we have pockets of work that is done by various, organizations, but it's very small work if you think of the size of the country and the size of the problem we have. Only the state has the capacity to run deep in terms of changing attitudes and behaviors. So the council has the opportunity to do that. It's not going to be rocket science. It's not going to happen immediately, because I think the appointment of the people to the council, the actual setting up of the council, the issue of approaching Treasury and getting support for it. What we're excited about is that because there's legislation now that, sets out how a council should be established and how it has to operate, it also means that there's a budget from Treasury. That's a big difference, because now we will have the money to support what I'm suggesting is that countrywide program, which runs wide and deep on prevention and puts out messaging all the time, because we need something that's going to be working on the psyche of our society on a constant basis for that kind of change to happen. So it's going to complement the work that is already being done, throughout the country by organizations like Masimanyane, like Power International, Soul City and all that. We're all doing this work, but we don't have the power and the reach that the state has, and it will now have through that National Council.
And of course, speaking about the various stakeholders, I presume that this now provides an opportunity for more inclusivity into the council's framework in engaging the various stakeholders, including civil society, labor, as well as the business sectors.
Absolutely. When we did the structure of the council, one of the things we said was that we wanted a 51% stake by civil society, which will be, include your religious sector, trade unions, etc., your NGOs, your faith-based organizations, and 49% government. I don't know whether this legislation actually sticks to that. We'll have to see that. But I think there's going to be a lot of contention now about who gets into that council. And I think what is very important is that we actually select people who know and understand the issue. Because there are many people who feel that they understand gender-based violence, but in actual fact they don't have that analysis. Unless they've actually worked closely on the ground with women, they won't have a deep enough analysis to understand what is required, in something. But I'm sure the council will be made up of experts, and we rely heavily on that assumption that it's not going to be people who don't understand the actual sector. Of course, the leader of the council is going to be a critical position because that's somebody who will drive the programs coming from the National Council, who will set the agenda for how to pull together all the different elements of work. Now, what's good for the council is the National Strategic Plan has been very clear that we have 6 pillars. And so if they work according to those pillars, that will give them guidance as to where they can look to pull in, the work. For instance, on pillar number 1 is leadership and accountability. That means what is State Department's doing, what are their responsibilities, and so forth. So the council is going to have a huge work, but it's going to make a very big contribution to addressing or to reducing levels of violence against women in the country.
Yeah. Let's talk, perhaps hone in a little bit on those very key provisions and the strengths of this GBV bill now that you believe will make a significant difference in the lives of women and, of course, vulnerable societies.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important is that the bill calls for us to look more strongly at the issues of gender equality. The problem that we have in our society, the key problem, is the low status of women in our society. And the bill creates a space for us to have a conversation about that and to then look at how we structure programs that actually address those issues. So those for us are the important provisions is that the bill is there to set up the structure, to provide the resources and the support to the country to address the issue more comprehensively and more holistically. And I think there's a lot of work that has to go into this before we're going to see the impact of this council. It's not like they're going to hit the road running.
Yeah.
It's going to be, and I think understanding how it is placed within government structures is going to be important to understand it and to understand how they can put effective programs in place. And we know that those are difficult issues. Often we get a mechanism like this, but it's underfunded and it's undersupported by government departments and so forth. So those are the challenges we are wary of, but we remain very optimistic and hopeful that the council will be able to provide a much, much wider prevention strategy to the country that will eventually lead to us seeing a drop in high levels of violence against women or gender-based violence and femicide.
Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, we appreciate the time today and, of course, for walking us through the impact, the potential intangible impact of this new GBVF legislation that has been signed. That was Dr. Leslie Ann Foster, who's the founder and executive director of the NGO Masimanyane Women's Rights, and they are one of the stakeholders, of course, in the fight against GBV. So I am informed by those who run the schedule of the show that the competition entry period is now closed. They've been inundated with all of your calls. Of course, we did ask you to call us, and we do see that quite a number of you, considerable number of you, sent us messages on WhatsApp. So maybe better luck next time for you. But to all of those that did call us, numbers have been randomly captured into our comms system, and we will be giving random numbers in random order a call back, and hopefully if you answer your phone, you do give us any 3 shows that are going to be part of the National Jazz Festival at the National Arts Fair. And the first person to give us 3 correct shows gets to come with us and enjoy the 2024 installation. It's going to be a big one because they're also celebrating 50 years of the National Arts Festival. So Makanda is going to be all abuzz, and we're all looking forward to a great week there. Stick by your phone. On the other side of Madupi, we're coming back.
Thanks, Bridge, and good afternoon. In your headlines, the Human Rights Commission says it has filed papers at the Equality Court against suspended DAMP Ronaldo Jose. A motorist has died after his car crashed through the wall of a Durban Mall parking lot, falling 4 stories and landing on its roof. And extreme heat has proved fatal for hundreds of Muslims who have embarked on the Hajj pilgrimage last Friday to the Kaaba at the Grand Mosque in Makkah in Saudi Arabia. I'll be back with a full news update at 3.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
After months of painstaking investigation, reporter Rihanna Croxford speaks to men who say they were recruited into a dark world, created to satisfy the sexual fantasies of Mike Jeffries and his British partner Matthew Smith. Tune into The Abercrombie Guys, The Dark Side of Cool, Thursday the 20th of June at 9 p.m. Then, stay tuned for Louis Theroux Life on the Edge at 10 p.m. as Louis explores how America has managed to take our darkest desires, commodify them, and turn them into a saleable product. Channel your inner curiosity with BBC Primetime documentaries. Thursdays from 9 till 11 p.m. only on S3. Open up.
Get private banking levels of service from an Auto & General private advisor. This exclusive service is perfectly tailored for customers with more to cover but less time to spend covering it. If you have more than a car to insure and your combined cover is valued at over 1 million rand, you qualify for this personalized service. Enjoy after-hours assistance, proactive policy management and more when you apply at autogen.co.za. Auto & General. Never not there. A&G is a licensed non-life insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
SABC Sport delivers a warm blanket this June.
3 teams are playing their hearts out in the PSL promotional playoffs, all hunting for a special ticket to the Big Boys League of Ibhola Lasemzansi.
The queens of the beautiful game kick like real champs in the Hollywood Bet Super League.
Foot Afrique brings you up to speed on African football, while Final Analysis wraps up your weekend.
LFC TV is the ultimate destination for Liverpool FC fans, while Sport at 10 keeps you awake on Wednesdays.
Dive deep into comprehensive analysis of the world of boxing on the TKO.
The Journos podcast brings together top sports journalists for engaging conversations and expert insights.
Countdown to Paris brings you up to speed on the build-up to the Olympic Games Paris 2024 on Saturday evenings.
There's action galore in the world of SABC Sport, Boxing World Weekly, NBA Lifestyle, Youth Sport Show, Goats Like Us, Racing 92 and many more. Happy Youth Month.
Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
It is the full circle with myself, Bridget Masinga, and we love it anytime we get to give away something nice. And this will be a great experience for you, whether you've been to Makhanda before or perhaps not. And this is your first time and you've always wanted to go. I can tell you this, it's always... it's always a week filled with fun and excitement because the cultural sectors all converge on the sleepy town of Makhanda, and the students also graciously make way for us to come through and dominate their space. And it's quite the international festival, as you've come to be aware. And this year they're celebrating 50 years of the National Arts Festival. So the itinerary is going to be great. We've had a lot of conversations with them leading up to this beginning last year. So there's lots of exciting things on the agenda. And we thought with our fellow collaborators, the Eastern Cape Parks and Tourism Agency, as well as the National Arts Festival, that we'd invite you to come with us. So we're giving you an opportunity to win two double tickets. That's 2 tickets, a ticket for you and your partner to come through. And it includes return flights for the both of you. It also includes 2 nights accommodation as well as ground logistics for you. There are some T's and C's as per usual with any competition. There are some terms and conditions that you would have to familiarize yourself with in the finer print. But for all intents and purposes, we're saying, hey, come through. Let's go to Makhanda. Let's have a great time. And we asked you if you could tell us any of the 3 shows that are going to be showcased as part of the National Jazz Festival in Makhanda. And we got joining me. Let's go to Tapelo out in Pretoria. How are you doing, Tapelo?
I'm very well, sis. And how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Hopefully, you're going to tell me 3 shows that are forming part of the National Jazz Festival program. Go for it.
Hopefully, I can. Hopefully, I can. Would love to go. I think there is the Inevitable Calling by Daliso Ndlazi.
The Inevitable Calling?
Yes. By Daliso Ndlazi.
Oh, okay. Let me see. I'm looking with my team as they look on their end as well. Okay, the second one, let's see.
There's Conversations.
Conversations, yeah.
Yes. And then there's a Raymond Alexander Trio, I think.
A Raymond Alexander Trio, you think?
Yes. Raymond Alexander Trio, I think if I remember correctly, performing.
Okay. I mean, listen, you came close, but not quite close, right? And it's not just my eyes, by the way, that are looking at this, Tapelo. There's like the 3 sets of eyes. Give us those 3 again.
There's the Inevitable Calling by Daliso Ndlazi.
Yeah.
And then there's Conversations, I think 26th of June, Conversations, by, I think that Yonela Manana, I think, is actually playing the sax in that. And then there is,
Tapelo.
Yes.
Tapelo, I mean, I'm just making you jump through hoops now because yabona sengifuna ukubona, but essentially you know, we had to make sure that we cross-check kahle. Yes, indeed, you are correct. The Inevitable Calling by Daliso Ndlazi, as well as you mentioned the oh man, now the team has also gone offline with me.
The
Conversations, yes, the Conversations and the Raymond Alexander Trio that are going to be a part of this. Yes, so you did indeed name 3 shows that are coming through under the National Jazz Festival. I'm presuming you're a big jazz aficionado.
You know what? I had a friend in 2020 introduce me into South African jazz.
Mm-hmm.
So Awunduduza Makatini, I'm enjoying his latest album.
Yes.
I'm enjoying listening to Tandintuli while I'm working. I'm working from home. So I think I'm going to get what I haven't gotten since I've been reintroduced to South African jazz. So I really am looking forward to it. I'm going to take all my warm clothes. And I promise you, Power Bank will be working overload. I am really looking forward to spending this time with you guys.
I love it. Thank you so much, Thapelo. We look forward to seeing you in a very cold Makhanda. Anybody who listened to me last year, I came from a European summer straight into Makhanda, and I kept on complaining about how cold I was the entire time. Please stay on hold for us so that our producers can capture all the relevant details. But yes, he got it right. If you sense some hesitation from our side, because we had to make sure we're sitting here with all the lists of all the shows and all the artists and all the titles. And so we had to cross-reference and make sure that he had everything absolutely correct. And that is the competition for today. Going first time out to Thapelo, who was one of the many callers that gave us a shout, and he's going to be joining us with his +1 in Makhanda. But don't worry, we'll have lots more competitions for you as the year unfolds. So if you weren't lucky this time around, don't stress. There'll still be another opportunity for you to come and hang out with us somewhere else that is fabulous. You can bank on that one. It is 3 o'clock. Let's take a quick pause, and then we'll come back. We'll find out what's on the national pulse, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up the show.
Top Sport with Michael Abramson.
Richards Bay coach, Vusumuzi Vilagazi, 4-0 win. That's about as comprehensive as it could have been. So you must be delighted with the way things turned out.
Definitely. We are excited as a team. I'm happy for the boys and I'm happy for the team for retaining the status in the PSL. But we knew very well that it wasn't going to be an easy game, considering the fact that they were motivated by the fact that if they score 2 goals, they might also find themselves in the PSL. But I think what helped us most was our defensive structure in trying to make sure that they don't score. And I think our plan worked accordingly.
Top Sport on SAFM. This year, we are celebrating Youth Month under the theme Actively Embracing the Socio-Economic Gains of Our Democracy. As we commemorate the massacre of school children during the Soweto Uprising of 1976, we also celebrate the liberation of our beloved country. #Freedom30. #Youth Month. The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga. Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m.
So we're off to Makhanda next week, and we're leaving you by yourself the entire week?
As long as it's Makhanda, not Wakanda, right?
No.
Sounds very similar.
It does.
Does it mean the same thing? When do you go there?
We leave Tuesday morning. So from Tuesday through to Friday, we'll be
So the whole of next week?
The whole of
Okay.
next week. Yeah.
Well, Wakanda or Makhanda or Grahamstown is a unique place, and I've had the privilege of being there during the festival. And
It's got an interesting buzz around the festival.
Absolutely.
Love it.
It's University Town.
Yes.
It's just complete takeover, isn't it?
Right? Yeah, absolutely love it. What's coming up today?
So the Human Rights Commission, as you probably are aware now, they will pick up the issue of the DA suspended MP Ronaldo Gous. I mean, so much coming out of that. We look at different angles on that story and what that really means. Is there a political will to solve the ongoing war in Sudan? It just seems ongoing, like it's a daily occurrence. So that's another issue. And then another issue, initiation season. And again, people dying, abductions. You maybe heard about that too. We'll talk about that. And as expected, don't ask me what, but there's ongoing issues around the political issues around the election. So what I don't know now, I may know a lot more in an hour's time. All of that's coming up,
There's actually, when you talk about initiation season, there's some good work being done by one of the MECs, I'm presuming the MEC of Health, in the Limpopo region of life. Limpopo, Venda. I remember seeing them on one of the 24-hour news cycles last year.
Yeah.
They've dropped the mortality rates. They're working together as sort of the collective with the chiefs and the villages and the community, and they've put all kinds of structures in place as the health department to ensure a smooth run of. I mean, they really were
please
the
give us the
standout
blueprint
story.
so we can pass it on.
Right? I've been trying in the back of my mind to remember what was her name. You know, when you're watching news, as we often do, and you're preoccupied with other things. But I'm sure your team can keep it in the back of their minds as a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll make a note of it. Limpopo.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay, so all of that coming up, the National Pulse, 3 to 6.
Lovely stuff. Ashraf is in the building in just a matter of minutes. Looking forward to great conversation there. Let's take a quick pause and then we come back and we wrap it up.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide. Leading the conversation. Bridget Masinga on SAFM.
I mean, if you're watching us on streaming and you're seeing me sort of, twist and bend myself like a pretzel, trying to get in a good stretch towards the end of the show, sitting can be a lot, you know what I mean? And so sometimes you just need to unwind that body just a little bit. We're wrapping up the last bit of conversation now with the Associate Professor in Strategy and Sustainability at the Stellenbosch Business School, Yaku Falls-Schenk, joining us. Today's the 20th of June and it's South Africa's Earthshoot Day. I didn't know this. Let's find out more. How are you doing? Prof, you good?
Thanks, Bridget. I'm doing splendid. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Tell us about, the significance of the day. We see some of the commercials. We see Nomza Mombata telling us about it, but perhaps a lot of us aren't clued in as to what it's all about.
Well, Earth Overshoot Day is the day in the year at which we surpass the point of the natural resources that nature can replenish in 1 year. So if you take, for instance, Qatar, that doesn't have a massive agricultural production. They don't produce much food, etc. So with the number of people they have, they already exceed their capacity to support their population very early in the year. A country like Uruguay, for instance, is much, much later in the year because they've got lots of natural resources and the consumption per capita is much less. So we're somewhere in the middle, but we are a little bit after the international average, which was the 1st of June. But today, from tomorrow, we're basically eating into our savings account, if you want to put it that way.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting indeed. And let's talk about the sort of, because there is an emphasis about the balance between our demand and nature's capacity. And I know I'm not clued in on it at all.
Yes. So South Africa makes a very interesting case in itself because I think because we've got a population that is extremely unequal. So on the one side, you've got a population that, almost consumes nothing, and that's the poorest of the poor, that's living beyond the breadline. And at the upper end, we probably have, some of the populations in the world that's the heaviest on resources because we eat a lot of meat, a lot of beef specifically. So we can try to find a middle, which is more just in terms of diet. There are, of course, many other instances of how we can decrease our impact. But in terms of food, if we eat less meat, more plant-based, on the side of the poor, we actually want people to eat more healthy and not just live from maize meal and food that actually nutritionally is not rich enough. So it gives us an interesting contrast between those two. But what we're saying is that, if we think about Earth Overshoot Day, it's not about shaming people. It's more about providing people with healthier and more sustainable options and then making it easy and also raising awareness around this issue.
And you say that Earth Overshoot Day is the wake-up call for South Africans that everything we consume from today onwards is taken from the future. Now, someone at home is sitting going, firstly, Prof, how do we even calculate, the consumption versus the demand in order to gauge that today is the day when we start eating into the deficit?
Yeah, so that's quite a complex calculation. So it takes in our forest consumption, our wheat, our maize production, our meat production, all of those things. And on the other side, we can see how much of that is consumed by the South African population. The easiest way of understanding this is, imagine you have a pond with 100 fish, and every year you will have 20 new fish in that pond. If we eat 20 fish every year, we will sustain ourselves forever because we will always have 100 fish as the base. But currently, we've already eaten our 20 fish today, and now we're eating into our 100 for the rest of the year. So it diminishes our capacity in the future to actually even live off this. We are the wealthiest generation in the history of the planet currently living on this planet. It's unlikely that future generations would be able to sustain this level of health and wealth if we continue the way we do.
Now, Doc, you've just mentioned, Prof, sort of some of the sustainable ways that we can begin to consider, right? How do we drive that sort of cultural shift, rather, towards more eco-friendly diets? How do we even foster that change in our society broadly?
I think there's already, globally, there's already a big change. In the last 5 years, the number of people that identify as vegan or vegetarian has tripled. In South Africa, that growth has been smaller or slower. It's 25%. But that kind of aligns with to be able to go to plant-based diets is almost sometimes a luxury. Even though it's cheaper, it is still very difficult for people to go into, having to prepare fresh food maybe every day, etc. And meat is often very convenient in that respect. But the way that to do that is not to shame people, but to raise awareness, like I said earlier, and to make it easier for people. The academics talk about nudging. If you think about risotto, for instance, risotto is a rice-based dish which is vegetarian, and moving that on a restaurant menu from the vegetarian side of the menu to the main meal side means that it actually increases the orders by 50%. It's the same dish, it's just the perception that goes with it that changes. So by bringing about these changes, by making it easier for people to say, look here, I'm not going to eat any meat today, or making it more socially acceptable, I think we will really turn that dial a lot. If I can put you another statistic on the table, 70% of soy in the world is produced to grow beef and not to feed people. So imagine if we just used more of that soy to feed people instead of feeding cattle with it. The efficiency losses are huge.
Wow, interesting. And then, of course, you talk about the need for balanced and positive policies that also promote sustainable choices without alienating individuals.
That's right. I think consumers have the biggest power. We can say that companies need to change and that legislation needs to come in. And of course, those are very important. But it is up to us to vote through our wallets. Now, quite often when you go into a shop, the less sustainable options are often cheaper because they were farmed in a less sustainable way. So we need to rely on policy there to weed out the less responsible companies and reward those companies that are following more sustainable routes to market. So I think it's a multi-pronged or multi-approach approach that we need to. It's consumers, it's companies, but legislation needs to bring up the back as companies move forward so that the better companies become the benchmark.
And what I'm also kind of gently hearing there is perhaps a more proactive way of compensating, remunerating, or acknowledging companies and entities that are moving in the right direction would be the better approach maybe for something like this versus just straight out penalizing, right? Let us actually acknowledge you for doing correct and having correct practices.
Correct. I think there's a thing called the social license to operate, which says that consumers start boycotting products that are not responsible. If you think back When Nike used to use sweatshops to make shoes, we didn't buy that. When VW had the emissions gate scandal, many people said, I'm not going to buy a Volkswagen next year. And, that kind of has recovered again.
Yeah.
But companies act responsible because consumers retaliate. And if we feel that we cannot retaliate, or if the companies see that I'm being punished for being progressive, then they need to speak to government and say, please help us to make the legislation stricter to take out those companies that are irresponsible.
Yeah. Prof, I mean, you've definitely given us a lot to chew on. So it is Earth Overshoot Day today. And I wonder, as we listen and find out more, just as a parting shot, it's 10 to 3. A lot of moms and dads are preparing to head home and get into the kitchen. What kind of action or conversation can we have today that perhaps might change the trajectory of how our individual households contribute towards our consumptions?
I think what is interesting about more sustainable eating as a starting point is that healthier foods are generally also more sustainable. It is a lot of research showing that plant-based diets are good for us. It keeps our guts healthy. It means that we are happier, that we feel better, but also in the long term that we live longer lives and more productive lives with our children. So the things that sustainability require of us is not to be inconvenienced. It's to make the right decisions for our own happiness and longevity.
Prof, thank you for the time. That was the Associate Professor in Strategy and Sustainability from Stellenbosch Business School, Jaco Vals-Schenk. And as you heard, today, June 20th, marks South Africa's Earth Overshoot Day. It is the day when our consumption of our ecological resources, it's a pleasure, Prof, and we appreciate the time. It is the day when our consumption of our ecological resources exceeds the planet's capacity to regenerate them for the year. We've eaten as much as we can possibly eat. We've used as much as we can possibly use. We are now in the red in Mother Nature's bank balance for the remainder of the year. And hopefully that brings some kind of awareness to yourself and your family. Hey, listen, we are inviting young people between the ages of 18 to 35 to take over the airwaves this youth month. And all you have to do is send a WhatsApp voice note on 061-410-4107, or you can email us at info@safm.co.za and the show that you would like to co-host. And also tell us, two compelling issues that are facing our 30 years of democracy from the young person's lens and perspective. And we could be inviting you to come through. And please remember that you have to be able to get to the show. You have to be able to get to the respective show that you want to come and take over. We had so much fun with this last year. The conversations were really good. The young people that we had, I had two incredible young ladies. And the one, if I remember correctly, came from... she drove to us from the Northern Cape. The Northwest, if I'm not mistaken. It's either she drove from the Northwest on Limpopo to come be part of the show that week. And we had so much fun with it. The conversation was really good. It was intergenerational. And at some point, it was quite polarizing. It was them against the rest of us, you and me, as we took them on head to head, but we had such a good time. And so this year, hoping to have another great time. We'll be in Makanda though, but you can definitely come and join Ashraf and Kathy, and of course, Stephen, if you feel like waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're still young. You still have it in you to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to be here for the breakfast show. And we'll be in Makanda. We will try and get some young people, some young voices from Makanda to be part of our conversations throughout the course of the week. But yeah, definitely if you want to be, a SAFM guest presenter for a day and come and take over the show and set the agenda of the respective show that you enjoy listening to the most, then all you have to do is send us a WhatsApp voice note on 061-410-4107 or email us at info@safm.co.za. And don't try to pass off as a youth when you are not a youth, ne? Like, we can hear it in your voice. Wena, baby boomer. On that note, from myself and my team, thank you as always for choosing to be in conversation with us. We don't take it for granted at all. It is a privilege and an honor to bring you the show every single day. We will see you tomorrow for Friday. How quickly time passes. We'll see you tomorrow for Friday when we get to have so much fun with friends of the show coming through for full access. I have no idea who's coming through tomorrow. It remains a surprise even for me right now, but we're going to have a great lineup. And of course, next week we'll be coming to you from Makanda. We're going to be out in the Eastern Cape. So if you happen to be in that region, do pop by and say hello. Inshallah, God willing, we get to do it again.
This is a tool. What I do, yes. 10 years, I don't never love. Here's us, tell me, yeah. Oh, yes, boss. Oh, see. This is a tool. Oh, my Lord, sorry for this single. But the sauce I am lunch. How I am on to go away a best. Hello, oh, Mosisa. Oh, see. This is a tool.